All right, I think we're live, baby.
All right.
Welcome to Fight Week on 5, brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm your host, Jonathan, aka Three Piece Combo. We got Alf Artega right over there, the Fight Genius. How you doing, my friend?
Good, good. I'm doing good.
Good to hear, man. Good to hear. So we got a pretty big fight this week. Pretty quietly, we have the number one pound for pound ranked fighter, Terrence Crawford, taking on Kell Brook for the title, and I think it's a pretty interesting matchup because you have somebody who's a little bit bigger than what Crawford is used to fighting, taking him on for the belt. Now, a lot of people are coming in and they're saying that Crawford is number one pound for pound. How do you feel about that? Do you agree that he's number one?
Well, I looked at their list and then I compared it to the Ring Magazine list, and I have the lists right here, and they were eerily similar. But okay, they have Crawford, Canelo in order. Okay, Crawford, Canelo, Inoue, Errol Spence, Teofimo Lopez, Loma, Usyk, Fury, Juan Francisco Estrada, and Triple G. Now the last few guys, if we go Crawford, Canelo's a free agent. Crawford's a top ranked guy. In a way, is a top ranked guy. Spence is the only PBC guy in the top 10, which is interesting. Teofimo, Loma, they're both top ranked guys. Usyk's from the zone. Fury is top ranked. So I don't know if they had this in mind when they made those lists, but where's Javante Davis? Where's the Charlo brothers? You know, where's I have a hard time pronouncing his name, but I know he's a light heavyweight, but Artur Bidiev, okay, he's 15-0. He has 15 knockouts. He's never done anything wrong. Miguel Berchel, who's a guy who should fight Tank Davis next. So, yeah, I guess I completely disagree with anybody that would put Terrence Crawford number one. I think Errol Spence is number one. At least Errol Spence is already. I understand he beat Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia is not a 147 pounder. He's a 140 pounder. So, but he still has that head on the wall, right? And he did beat Sean Porter. So Errol Spence is probably number one on my list. But
Right. I mean, he took Sean Porter's zero. You know what I mean? That's a pretty big thing to do. And I'd have to agree with you. And you have over there, you still have Canelo. He's only 30 years old. He's fought so
mm,
much during his career, but he's still so good. And in the sport, it depends how much fights. Obviously, you have depending on where you are in your age as far as your prime. But he's still such a good fighter. And like you said, Errol Spence is killing it right now. And then obviously, uh, Teofimo Lopez has a case to make because you beat the number one guy. Technically, you
yeah.
should be number one guy. You know what I mean? So there's always a case to be made there.
And
Um,
what's Javante Davis done wrong, right?
exactly. There's so many people. I mean, he won so emphatically over a guy that has belts in multiple weight divisions. So he's dominated. If you put all the belts that are across 5 or 6 different weight divisions, and the more weight divisions you dominate, that should increase your value when it comes to pound for pound ranking. So I do agree
Yeah.
that I think it's a little that Crawford is number one pound for pound, but he does have the zero. I think that's one thing they do. They overrank the zero, especially
Yeah.
in boxing, is that the zero is a little bit uh, overranked. Now we know that Crawford, of course, is still one of the best, and he's still kind of in his prime. But Brook is coming in, and he's a little bit later in his prime, and a lot of people are saying that this is just a final payday for him, and that
Mm.
he really has no chance in this fight. That this is just a back of the after his prime. He's just looking for one last dance before he goes out. Do you agree, or do you think he has a legitimate chance in this fight?
Well, if you follow what Terence Crawford has done to get that title, he had a hit list, a real hit list of the very best at 140, and then some of the best up and coming 147 pounders. And then he wins the title against Jeff Horn. And people forget Jeff Horn is a guy who defeated Manny Pacquiao. Yeah, okay, Manny Pacquiao wasn't at his best. Speaking of pound for pound, Manny Pacquiao is a welterweight champion, beat a former pound for pound guy, and he's not in the top 10.
Not
So
even
that's
on the
also a
list,
mistake. Yeah.
right?
And by the way, just a call back to that. Jermel Charlo is a unified champion at a 154. He's done nothing wrong. He's not in the top 10, so that's a mistake as well. Yeah, Terence Crawford, ever since he won that title from Jeff Horn, it's just been showcase after showcase after showcase. And it just seems to me, I don't have any information, to suggest that this is the truth, but It sure seems that way. That ESPN knows that this is their meal ticket, and they're not going to screw them up anyway. So they're just going to give them opponents until they can get those big money fights.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that they're definitely overranking him, but I think that for him, Brooke, he's coming a little bit after his prime, but he still has a
Hmm.
unique challenge that Terrence Crawford is going to have to face. And in this fight, he's facing somebody that's a little bit bigger. Crawford is now, and I think that it's possible that Brooke can come in, win the earlier rounds because he is an aggressive fighter, and
Hmm.
he's gotten knocked out a couple of times, but that's part of being an aggressive fighter is that you put yourself in those positions. But I think he's not. I think he does have a legitimate shot at winning this fight. But I don't think he can knock him out. I think it would have to be him doing kind of like what Lopez did and just outpower him for the first couple of rounds, at least so you can put 5 or 6 in the bag early. And if you can
Yeah,
do that,
he's gonna have to lean on Crawford a lot, and he's gonna have to fight, kind of a dirty fight on the inside. He's gonna have to get a lot of clinches in. Now, usually what they do for Terrence Crawford, since he gets to control the whole promotion, and remember, Kell Brook is a guy who's almost exclusively fought in England. He even got Gennady Golovkin to go over to England. All right, he got Errol Spence as champion to go over to England.
right?
So he doesn't have control of the promotion anymore. So usually what they do with Top Rank is that they're going to give Bud Crawford a 20-foot ring, maybe. So they're going to give him plenty of room to be able to move. But Kell Brook, you got to understand, everybody says, okay, he had those 2 bad losses. Who were they against? First of all, he did something that was insane. He tried to go up to 160 pounds to fight Triple G. Of course, he's going to get knocked out in 5 rounds.
Yeah, and
But
nobody
then
else
I
wanted that
thought he
fight.
fought. Yeah, but then I thought he fought a really good fight against Errol Spence until he didn't. But the last few fights, he's walked down his opponents. So he's gonna have to do pretty much the same. But I do warn, fans that are gonna tune in for this fight. Remember who controls the promotion. So Terrence Crawford's gonna get the ring that he wants. It's not gonna be a 16-foot ring. It's probably gonna be a 20-foot ring.
Yeah, more space, more area to maneuver, and
Yeah.
that might play to Crawford's advantage. And that's obviously the one is just to make him wear down earlier because you know that the best chance that Brooke has to win in this fight is early, and he has
Hmm.
to win those early rounds. And if he doesn't get those ones early in the bag, it's going to be really hard for him. Um, so Crawford is ranked number one right now. Where do you feel like this fight ranks as far as degree of difficulty of fights that Crawford has taken so far?
Well, I remember when he fought Bradis Prescott, I thought that was gonna be a really tough fight for him. And he passed with flying colors. Terrence Crawford has really, really impressed me on the way up. He hasn't impressed me as champion because I really do feel that they've handpicked his opponents. And this one might even be handpicked as well. Okay, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, I think he's impressed me on the way up. So as far as degree of difficulty, I think now he sees the big payday at the end. He sees the big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. He needs a knockout. Okay, to say that he doesn't have any pressure in this fight would be a lie. He has a lot of pressure in this fight because we're talking about a $200 million gate against Errol Spence if it happens. So he needs a knockout. So the pressure is on to actually press the fight and go get it and go get a knockout. So the degree of difficulty for this fight is going to be pretty high, I think.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it could be done just because the style of fighter that Brooke is. He's an aggressive fighter. You know what I mean? He likes to throw punches and combinations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he doesn't really rely on his counter punching as much. He's really a fighter that'll be on his front foot. So I think this is something that'll work in the advantage for Crawford. But I think this is a unique challenge for him just because of the size. So when you're having somebody that's fought somebody that's so heavy like Triple G, and now you're going down to fight somebody the size of Errol Spence, or sorry, Terrence Crawford, those punches you can walk through them a little bit more. You have the ability to kind of punch through him a little bit more. So he
Mm-hmm.
might put himself under a little bit of danger in the first few rounds, knowing he can take some of those shots, just so he can be able to win those first couple of ones. Um, but I think this is something that Crawford really could use to put in the belt, to put in his bag, as far as names that he can put in his background. Um, when he's building up his legacy. Now, let's take Brooks' side for now, and let's see, what do you think would be his path to victory? How do you think he comes out on top when in this fight?
Well, he's gonna have to smother Terrence Crawford as much as he can, and whenever Terrence Crawford does his switching from from conventional to southpaw, which he does a lot, he's gonna have to crowd him and just grab him. I know it's not legal, but he's gonna have to do that because usually what Crawford likes to do is that's usually when he shines for the judges. He tends to score that way, and trust me when I tell you, Crawford, if he starts scoring and he starts getting punches in, he has taken a lot of guys out in his career. He can get rid of you in early rounds too if he gets to you. So you're gonna have to crowd him. You're gonna have to walk him down, and you're gonna have to step to him. And it's not really about volume of punches; it's about quality of punches. You're gonna have to land a lot of punches to the body, and you have to slow him down and try to get him into the later rounds. And then just gonna try to either set up a knockout late with some counter punching as Crawford starts to come forward as he might be a little bit desperate if you take a lot of the early rounds, or just win a decision that way. I think the degree of difficulty for Kell Brook is really high because I believe that this is kind of a setup. He's being set up to lose in this fight, so I think the degree of difficulty is pretty high, but there is a path to victory, and that's it right there.
Yeah, I've seen lines coming in as high as plus 800 to plus
Yeah.
1200 in this fight for Brooks. So it is a difficult fight for him, but albeit it's not impossible, of course. And like you said, it's going to be really important just to make Crawford uncomfortable. If you can make him uncomfortable and make him think more and make sure that he doesn't get into that flow state, then it's going to be he has a much higher chance of winning this fight. But if he puts himself in Crawford's lane and allows himself to just be in that pace that Crawford likes to keep, then it's going to be over for him because Crawford's then just going to work it up. And like you said, he has the ability to put people out. So there's a possibility that if Crawford gets that groove, he's going to put you out. But if you can make him uncomfortable, like you said, wrap him up, hug him up, make the referee separate you guys, do extra things that'll make him focus his mind elsewhere, then he has a chance to win this fight. Well, for Crawford, obviously, coming in, he's the heavy favorite. I've seen from minus 700 to almost minus 1900. How do you think he wins this fight?
For Bud Crawford, it's just his movement, and I really do believe he has to sell out a little bit in this fight. He's going to have to put punches together, put combinations together, and try to get him out of there because now, you're punching for dollars now. Like, what good are you if you – well, first of all, you're not on pay-per-view in this fight. Is that correct? It's not –
No, it's Top Rank, so I think it's just ESPN Plus.
Okay, so they didn't even try to get you a pay-per-view date for this,
right.
All right?
And you're supposedly number one round.
Yes. Okay, and you're coming off Gervonta Davis having a really good pay-per-view showing. I don't know the numbers. Do you have the numbers for Gervonta Davis last
I
fight?
can pull them up right now.
Pull them up. See if he did, and I'll tell you right now the numbers he needed to do. He needed to do 300,000 buys, and if he did 300,000 buys, he's gangbusters. He's off and running. So we'll see how many.
Yeah,
what number you get?
250,000 buys.
All right, they're in the neighborhood. They're arrow up for Gervonta Davis.
Mm-hmm.
So Bud Crawford, he needs this fight. He's a great fighter. In my opinion, he's the second best welterweight in the world. I think he's behind Errol Spence as the second best welterweight in the world. He does belong in the top 3, top 4 pound for pound. But he needs this fight. He needs an impressive showing. He can't run out the clock and win a unanimous decision. He has to go finish this fight, finish it in impressive fashion. So he's going to have to put punches together, and he's going to have to put himself at some type of risk because that's the only way he's going to get these big fights going forward. And as far as opponents, throw a rock, and you got a great opponent. So hopefully this is the last time we see a Crawford showcase, and the next time we see Crawford will be in a big fight, a real big fight.
Real fight. And, especially coming off of a fight like the Gervonta Davis fight where that knockout is contender for knockout of the year. And the way he did it, it's such an exclamation point, and it's such a statement when it comes to making your name in this sport. So if you're Crawford, you can't come in and put yourself not on a pay-per-view and then not deliver at all to the common public eye. Because if you have somebody like Davis come in, do a superstar knockout that's on SportsCenter every day for the next week, and then you have somebody that goes and does a unanimous decision, you're not going to get those pay-per-view numbers. And no matter how big that number is next to that zero, it won't really matter because you're not facing good competition. You're just facing squash matches. And nobody really wants to see that because you already know what's going to happen in those fights. But like you said, I think Crawford has to come in, put those combinations together, and I think it's really important for him to just dictate the pace of the fight, facing somebody a little bit bigger, wear him out early. His cardio is not going to be as good. He's going to have to make a little bit bigger of a weight cut. So I think if he wears on him early, he can really just go ahead and, like you said, late, get a knockout. That puts himself on the map. Now coming in, what's your pick? What do you think of this fight's going to go by?
Okay, I have faith that Terence Crawford, has seen the writing on the wall and he needs a knockout. I think he puts together a really nice fight, and I think he gets him out of there in the 10th round. And the reason it's going to be the 10th round because I think that Kell Brook is going to be ready for this, and he's going to have Kell Brook also knows like this is his path to a really big payday because if he happens to get an upset here, we're talking about a $30 million payday against Errol Spence again, maybe. Who knows? Maybe a $5 million payday against Sean Porter. And maybe Manny Pacquiao says, okay, this is exactly what I want. Let's go to Macau. Let's sell out an arena in Macau. And here's $30 million for that too. So Kell Brook is looking at this fight as a lottery. So I trust that he's going to be the best version of Kell Brook, but I don't think it'll be good enough. I think Terence Crawford knows what's at stake, and he'll get him out of there in the 10th round.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think it's going to be a late TKO. I don't think it'll be a flush knockout. I think it'll be a TKO where he gets knocked down a couple times and it gets called. But I think you're right. I think Kell Brook is going to come in, put out a good showing, but it's going to take Crawford coming in, finishing the fight strong, wearing him out early, and finishing the fight late. So we both take the same pick heading into this fight. Any closing thoughts on this fight that before we move on to what we have for next week?
Yeah, my only closing thought is, hopefully, I'll be rooting for Terence Crawford to look great. If he could win on a one-punch knockout in the first round, that'd be great. Unless they plan on just giving him a bunch of showcases after this, because I've had enough of the showcases. So I'm rooting for Terence Crawford, and hopefully that means that his next opponent's gonna be Keith Thurman, Sean Porter. I know it's not going to be Errol Spence. That's down the line. Maybe, who knows? Maybe even Manny Pacquiao. All of those are big, big fights, and I'd love to see them.
Right. It's very WWE-esque where you have a new wrestler that comes in. He's the really big, strong guy, and you send like 3 or 4 of the smallest fighters that you have against him, knowing that he has no chance. It's just tired of squash matches at this point. You want to see him against real competition. So I agree. If he's number one pound for pound, truly, let him prove it. Let him go out there, get a win, and then face somebody of stiff competition. So next week, on Fight Week on 5, we do have a pay-per-view coming up for UFC, and we have a flyweight showcase. So we have the men's flyweight division, Deiveson Figueiredo, knockout machine. This dude is so awesome, man. Such an awesome guy for a 125-pounder, taking on Alex Perez in the main event. And then the co-main event, you have Valentina Shevchenko taking on Jennifer Maia. What are your thoughts on those fights coming up next week?
Well, I'm interested to see both. I'm interested to see Jennifer Maia, but I thought we were going to talk about Paul Felder and Dos Anjos.
Oh, yeah, we have that Paul Felder, right.
Yeah. That's going to be a nice showcase next week. I look forward to, I would say a Figueiredo Maia parlay is probably what I would go with. Something like that. Although I like all 4 fighters, but that's probably what I'm going to bet. One favorite, one slight favorite. So yeah, that's the way I see it next week.
Yeah, I'd have to go Figueiredo. I'd probably go Shevchenko. I think her hands are just great. But before that, like you said, I don't even know why this slipped my head. We have Paul Felder stepping on a 5 days notice. The dude's been doing everything lately. He's been coaching. He's cornered. I think it was Jared Gordon, because his whole corner got COVID. He on top of that, he does announcing. He'll announce half of the fights, and now on 5 days' notice, after he says he retired, he's stepping in and he's
Yes.
fighting against Rafael dos Anjos. Now, I think this is a sleeper for fight of the year because Felder is nasty, man. Felder is nasty. He throws those nasty elbows,
And he's coming
just
off a fight of the year against Dan Hooker. So
exactly. That was such a good scrap, and I think he won that fight. I think he got robbed. I really think he won that fight. But he's going against somebody like in the former champion Rafael dos Anjos. Coming in, he's lost 4 of his last 5, but
but against who?
Exactly, Covington, Usman, and then you have Leon Edwards, who's won 8 in a row. So,
and beat Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee's, he's a fighter.
Exactly. You beat a guy who just got a tattoo on top of his head. So on top of that, you have a pretty crazy guy. So, Dos Anjos coming down back to 155 after fighting at 170 for a little bit. Who do you think's gonna win that fight? What are you thinking in that fight?
Man, I would say that Rafael dos Anjos has a decent class edge, but I think the inactivity is going to hurt him a little bit. He has 2 fights in the last 18 months. Is that right? Is that about right?
Let me see.
I know he last fought in January, right? His last fight was in January.
Yes, last fight was in January. Yep.
And he has 2 in 18 months, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because
okay, I think
2 years before that, he fought against Colby Covington for the belt. And he lost. That was for the interim strap.
So I think the inactivity is going to hurt him a little bit. I don't put against him his 1-4 record the last 5 because of who it was.
Exactly.
So I think Paul Felder, being active, even if it's 5 days, we've seen it a bunch in the UFC where guys come in on short notice and do very, very well. So I'll take Paul Felder by decision just because nobody really finishes Dos Anjos. So I'll take him by decision. I'll take Paul Felder wins a split decision.
That's a good pick because especially for split decision because a lot of split decisions has not gone Felder's way. So maybe the judges are kind to him this time. I'm gonna have to go on the other side and take Dos Anjos just because I feel like the capability for him to take this fight to the ground if he wants to, and really work the submissions and wear him down early because Felder's coming in obviously off of short notice. So his cardio is not going to be as great as it normally would be. So he's going to want to come in probably firing and try to win those first couple of rounds and win the fight in the first couple of rounds. And if RDA can take him down in the first round and wear him out, I think that neutralizes everything. I think that really changes the game. And if he's able to really just tire him in that first round, I don't think Felder is going to have enough to win the fight late because RDA is a guy that can not only submit you, but he can stand and strike with you. Like if you watch his fight with Robbie Lawler, oh my God, that's one of the greatest fights ever. Because Lawler
is there word from Dos Anjos camp of how he's looking now? Although they're not going to lie,
right.
But like, how does he look? Because he's an older fighter. So and the inactivity is what worries me. And what's the line on that fight? Because that might be a fight I might put something on.
Right. Let me check the line on it right now. But he does look slimmer because I was watching his interview. I think he's shaved too. He looks really young. He's only 36 years old. I was thinking the same thing. He's just been in the sport for so long that it's just it seems like he's been fighting a long time because he has some.
No, his hit list and his hit list of opponents. We just mentioned 5, but you could go like 15 deep. Like it's a who's who of
exactly. It's a crazy amount of people that he's fought. So it's pretty close. RDA is closing in at minus 190. Felder is at plus 155. So that's almost a pick 'em basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Felder.
Yeah, I would need a little bit more. I would need a little bit more to bet on Felder.
Yeah, I think so too because that's not really. I think his odds should be a little bit higher that he's coming in off of a short notice. And he hasn't had the time to prepare for this fight. And he's going against a guy that can take you down. Felder has about 60% takedown defense. RDA averages about 2.5 takedowns per fight. So if he gets 1 or 2 of those takedowns early, then the fight really is pretty neutralized for him. But it's going to be, I think it's going to be a really exciting fight. The stand and bang between these guys are going to be incredible. And I think it's a sleeper for fight of the year. I think it's a really, really good potential that this fight can get really, really messy and really fun for the fight fans to watch coming up. So we have that this weekend. We have the Crawford and Brook fight this weekend. And then next weekend we have UFC 255, I believe, and that's the flyweight. And then the week after that, we have the Mike Tyson fight. So that's gonna be fun. We got a couple of fight week on 5 coming up. Do we have a soccer show coming up next on the channel? Is that what's
I
going on?
believe so. Yeah, I think that's on next.
All right, cool, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. So if anybody wants to, if anybody's watching soccer, next on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel, we have soccer coming up next. So we, of course, we have a bunch of content creators that we want you to check out. So thanks you guys for checking out Fight Week on 5, brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm your host, Jonathan, aka 3-Piece Combo. We got my boy Alf that way, the Fight Genius, and I hope you guys have a good night and hope you guys enjoy the fight. Have a good one, y'all.
All right. See you guys next week.